Deep in West Virginia's mountains, where radio towers pierce ancient ridges, some mysteries broadcast their secrets into silence. On September 15, 2019, at exactly 8:47 a.m., Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the radio at the Pocahontas County Communications Center. "Base, this is Tower 6, beginning routine maintenance on the primary array. Weather's clear, visibility good. Should have everything wrapped up by noon." And whoa, it was the last anyone would hear from him. Beacon Ridge rises 2,847 feet above the West Virginia mountains, its red and white radio tower piercing the morning fog like a steel needle. Built in 1947, the 400-foot structure serves as a critical communications relay for emergency services across 3 counties. From its base, you can see nothing but endless ridges rolling toward the horizon, covered in oak and maple forests that turn the mountains into a patchwork quilt each fall. Marcus Webb had been maintaining the tower for 6 years. At 34, he was a man who preferred solitude to crowds, technical problems to small talk. His colleagues at Mountain Communication Services knew him as thorough, methodical, and perhaps most importantly for his line of work, fearless when it came to heights. He'd spent 8 years in the Army as a communications specialist before settling in these mountains, drawn by the isolation and the technical challenge of keeping rural America connected. The maintenance scheduled for that Sunday was routine, replacing weather-damaged coaxial cables and checking transmission equipment 60 feet up the tower. Marcus had performed similar work dozens of times before. His truck was equipped with every tool he might need. His safety protocols were military precise, and the weather forecast called for clear skies all day. At 10:15 a.m., Marcus checked in again, his voice carrying the familiar confidence of experience. "Base, Tower 6. Primary cables replaced, moving to secondary array. All equipment testing normal." The transmission was clear, professional, unremarkable. Then, at 11:23 a.m., everything changed. Dispatcher Jenny Caldwell was monitoring multiple radio channels when Marcus's transmission cut through the routine chatter. But this time, his voice carried an edge of confusion, even alarm. "Base, Tower 6 deteriorated. I'm seeing... Wait, that's not right. The equipment readings don't match what I'm seeing up here. Something's interfering with..." Static flooded the channel. Not the usual weather static that Mountain Communications deal with regularly, but something else. A deep, rhythmic interference that seemed to pulse through the airways like a mechanical heartbeat. Caldwell tried to raise Marcus immediately. "Tower 6, please repeat. You're breaking up." Silence. "Tower 6, this is base. Do you copy?" Nothing but that strange, pulsing static. Caldwell continued trying to reach Marcus every 10 minutes for the next 2 hours. According to communication logs, she made 17 attempts to re-establish contact. Each time, the radio channel remained eerily quiet, except for that persistent interference pattern that seemed to mock her efforts. By 2:00 p.m., when Marcus failed to complete his scheduled check-in, alarm bells were beginning to ring. Mountain Communications Services Supervisor Dale Morton tried Marcus's cell phone, no answer. The tower's backup communication system showed all equipment functioning normally, but Marcus Webb had simply vanished from the airways. What made his silence even more troubling was Marcus's reputation for absolute reliability. In 6 years of tower maintenance, he had never missed a scheduled radio check, never failed to report a delay, never left a job site without confirming his departure with dispatch. Yet as the afternoon shadows grew longer across Beacon Ridge, one thing became increasingly clear. Something had gone very wrong at 2,847 feet above sea level, and Marcus Webb was nowhere to be found. Dale Morton arrived at the Mountain Communication Services office at 6:30 a.m. on Monday, September 16th, hoping to find some explanation for Marcus Webb's disappearance in the technician's meticulous records. What he discovered in Marcus's desk drawer would raise more questions than it answered. Marcus kept extraordinarily detailed records. His maintenance log for Beacon Ridge filled 3 thick notebooks, dating back to his first day on the job 6 years earlier. Every repair, every equipment reading, every weather delay was documented in his precise handwriting. Morton flipped through pages of technical notes, equipment serial numbers, and atmospheric conditions until he reached September 15th. The entry began normally. 830 hours, arrived on site. Primary array showing normal readings. Weather clear. Wind 58 mph from the southwest. But then, halfway down the page, the writing stopped mid-sentence. The final entry read, secondary equipment showing anomalous readings and interference patterns, inconsistent with standard atmospheric. And that was it. Nothing more. Marcus Webb was not the kind of person to leave things unfinished. In the Army, he'd been a Signal Corps specialist, responsible for maintaining communication links in forward operating bases where equipment failure could mean life or death. His military service record, which Morton had reviewed during the hiring process, was exemplary. Commendations for technical expertise, leadership under pressure, and what one commanding officer called an almost supernatural ability to diagnose equipment problems. After his discharge in 2013, Marcus had drifted for a while. He worked briefly for telecommunications companies in Virginia and Tennessee, but the corporate environment didn't suit him. He preferred solving problems alone, working at his own pace, away from the politics and pressure of office life. When Mountain Communications Services offered him the position maintaining remote tower sites across West Virginia, it seemed like the perfect match. Marcus lived alone in a small trailer outside Hillsboro, about 40 minutes from the Beacon Ridge site. His neighbors described him as quiet, polite, but not particularly social. He paid his bills on time, kept his property neat, and was sometimes seen at the local diner reading technical manuals over coffee and eggs. He had no family in the area, few close friends, and what his supervisor Dale Morton called an almost monastic dedication to his work. But the work at Beacon Ridge had been challenging from the beginning. The tower's history was littered with technical problems that defied explanation. Built in 1947 as part of a federal communications project, the site had experienced more equipment failures, atmospheric interference, and maintenance issues than any other tower in the region. Morton pulled the historical maintenance files, some dating back to the 1950s. The reports told a consistent and troubling story. Equipment that worked perfectly at other sites would malfunction at Beacon Ridge. Sensitive electronics would fail without warning. Radio transmissions would be interrupted by unexplained interference patterns. In 1962, a technician named Robert Hayes had reported unusual electromagnetic readings that couldn't be explained by weather or solar activity. In 1978, maintenance crews documented radio equipment that appeared to be receiving signals from unknown sources. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, there were dozens of reports of equipment behaving in ways that contradicted basic electronics principles. The most troubling report came from 1994, when technician Linda Marshall wrote, "Strongly recommend comprehensive electromagnetic survey of Beacon Ridge site. Equipment readings suggest interference source of unknown origin within 500-meter radius of tower base. Standard diagnostic procedures ineffective." That survey was never conducted. Marcus had been aware of the site's reputation when he took the job, but he'd approached the technical challenges with characteristic determination. Over his 6 years maintaining the tower, he'd gradually reduced the frequency of equipment failures and improved overall system reliability. Whatever was causing the problems at Beacon Ridge, Marcus had learned to work around it. But his personal notebooks, which Morton discovered in a locked drawer, told a different story entirely. Starting about 8 weeks before his disappearance, Marcus had begun documenting phenomena that weren't part of his official reports. Strange variations in electromagnetic field readings. Equipment that seemed to respond to signals that shouldn't exist. Transmission patterns that appeared to be artificially generated but came from no known source. The final entry in his personal log, dated September 10th, 5 days before he disappeared, was particularly unsettling. Anomalies, increasing in frequency and intensity. Equipment modifications required to compensate. Someone or something is using our tower for unauthorized transmissions. Need to document everything before reporting to federal authorities. Nah. By Monday evening, when Marcus failed to return home for the second night, his supervisor knew this wasn't a simple case of a technician getting delayed on the job. Dale Morton called the Pocahontas County Sheriff's Office to report Marcus Webb as a missing person. The official search would begin at dawn, but Morton couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened to Marcus was connected to the strange technical problems that had plagued Beacon Ridge for over 70 years. Sheriff's Deputy Rita Moss had worked these mountains for 12 years, and she knew that getting straight answers from the locals required patience, respect, and often more than one conversation. On Tuesday morning, September 17th, she began interviewing the sparse community around Beacon Ridge, starting with the family that had lived closest to the tower for the longest time. The Harlan homestead sat in a narrow valley about 2 miles east of the tower, accessible only by a gravel road that wound through dense forest. 3 generations of Harlans had farmed these hills, and Patriarch Eugene Harlan, now 73, remembered when the government first came to build the tower in 1947. They showed up with their trucks and equipment, didn't ask nobody's permission. Eugene told Deputy Moss from his front porch, where he sat whittling a piece of oak. Government said it was for national security, some kind of a communications thing. We didn't have much say in the matter. Eugene's daughter-in-law, Sarah Harlan, brought sweet tea and listened as her father-in-law talked. She proved more forthcoming about recent events. That technician, Marcus, he was a good man. Polite, never bothered nobody. Sometimes he'd wave when he drove past. But lately, she paused, glancing at her father-in-law. Lately what, ma'am? Deputy Moss prompted. Well, there's been strange things happening. Radio interference in the house, especially at night. Our television gets all staticky around 10-11 o'clock. Sometimes we hear voices on our CB radio that ain't supposed to be there. Not to you. Eugene shifted in his chair. Mountain's always been peculiar, even before they built that tower. When pressed for details, the Harlans became evasive. They'd heard unusual broadcasts late at night. Not regular radio stations, but transmissions that seemed to be coming from Beacon Ridge itself. The voices spoke in what Sarah described as numbers and letters, like some kind of code. How long has this been going on? Deputy Moss asked. Maybe 2 months, Sarah said, but it got worse in the past few weeks. Sometimes the broadcasts would go all night. Other families in the area told remarkably similar stories. The Kowalskis, who ran a small sawmill 3 miles south of the tower, reported that their equipment had been experiencing unexplained electrical problems since mid-July. Motors would stall without reason. Lights would flicker in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. My grandfather always said this mountain was different, Maria Kowalski told the deputy. The Cherokee used to avoid this ridge, called it a place where spirits talked to each other. Deputy Moss interviewed 7 families over 2 days. The pattern was remarkably consistent. Starting around late July 2019, residents within a 5-mile radius of Beacon Ridge had experienced increasing electronic interference, strange radio transmissions, and what several described as an uneasy feeling that seemed to grow stronger as autumn approached. Most troubling were the accounts of the nighttime broadcasts. Multiple families reported hearing transmissions that didn't match any known radio format. Sequences of numbers, coordinates, and occasionally what sounded like technical instructions delivered in a flat, mechanical voice. It wasn't like any radio show I ever heard, explained Jim Morrison, a retired coal miner who lived about 4 miles from the tower. The voice sounded, I don't know how to describe it, like a computer trying to talk like a person, but not quite getting it right. The broadcast typically began around 10:00 p.m. and continued until dawn, always on frequencies that should have been empty. Several residents had tried to record the transmissions, but their equipment would malfunction whenever they attempted to document what they were hearing. When Deputy Moss asked why no one had reported these incidents to authorities, the responses were telling. Mountain families had learned over generations to handle their own problems. They were suspicious of government involvement, having seen federal agencies come and go over the decades, usually leaving more problems than they solved. Besides, Eugenia Harlan said, "Who would believe us? And what if they decided the solution was to shut down all the radio equipment? Half the county depends on that tower for emergency communications." There was also fear. Several residents admitted they worried that complaining about the broadcasts might bring unwanted attention from federal authorities. The mountain communities had long memories of government overreach, from land seizures for national forests to environmental regulations that had devastated the local coal industry. But Marcus Webb's disappearance had changed the calculation. As Deputy Moss prepared to leave the Harlan homestead, Sarah Harlan called her aside. "Deputy," she said quietly, "there's something else you should know. The night before that technician went missing, Saturday night, the broadcasts were different, louder, more urgent sounding, and they went on until almost dawn." Different how? The voice kept repeating coordinates, same numbers over and over, for hours. "My husband wrote them down." She handed Moss a piece of paper with coordinates written in pencil. 38.2498 degree and 79.9142 degree. Deputy Moss checked her GPS unit. The coordinates pointed to a location about half a mile northeast of Beacon Ridge Tower, deep in the National Forest. As she drove back toward town, Deputy Moss couldn't shake the feeling that the mountain families knew more than they were telling. Their stories were too consistent, their details too specific to dismiss as rural superstition. Something was happening on Beacon Ridge, and Marcus Webb had somehow gotten caught in the middle of it. At first light on Wednesday, September 18th, a joint search team from the Pocahontas County Sheriff's Office and West Virginia State Police arrived at Beacon Ridge. What they found at the base of the tower immediately raised more questions about Marcus Webb's disappearance. Marcus's white Ford pickup truck sat exactly where it should be, parked in the small gravel clearing beside the tower's equipment building. The truck was unlocked, keys still in the ignition. His tool belt hung on the passenger seat, and his thermos of coffee sat half empty on the dashboard, still faintly warm despite the cool morning air. Sergeant Lisa Rodriguez of the state police took charge of processing the scene. Everything appeared completely normal, she later noted in her report. The vehicle showed no signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry. It looked like someone had simply stepped away from their truck and intended to return shortly. Marcus's equipment was spread across the ground in an organized pattern. Coaxial cables, testing meters, safety gear, all arranged with the methodical precision that characterized his work. But his personal radio, a handheld unit he always carried for emergency backup, was conspicuously missing. The search team used climbing equipment to access the tower itself. State Trooper Mike Chen, who had technical climbing experience, ascended the steel lattice structure while other officers searched the ground below. What he found 40 feet up the tower stopped the investigation in its tracks. Marcus Webb's safety harness was still clipped to the tower's rail system at the 40-foot level, exactly where he should have been working on the secondary transmission array. The harness was securely fastened, showing no signs of damage or tampering. The safety line was intact, properly anchored, and still bore Marcus's weight specifications on the equipment tags. "I've never seen anything like it," Trooper Chen told investigators. The harness was positioned as if someone was wearing it one moment and simply vanished the next. There was no way for someone to get out of that safety system without deliberately unclipping multiple backup connections. The technical equipment at the tower site told an even stranger story. Marcus's digital multimeter, which he'd been using to test transmission lines, was found at the base of the tower with its display frozen on an impossible reading, electromagnetic field measurements that were 10 times higher than anything the device was designed to detect. 2 other pieces of testing equipment showed similar anomalies. The spectrum analyzer that Marcus used to identify signal interference was damaged beyond repair. its internal circuitry apparently overloaded by some kind of massive electromagnetic pulse. A field strength meter was found with its LCD display completely blank, though the device still powered on normally. "In 20 years of investigating electronic equipment failures," said Dale Morton, Marcus's supervisor, who had been called to examine the scene, "I've never seen damage patterns like this. It's as if all the sensitive equipment was hit by a focused burst of electromagnetic energy, but only the most sophisticated devices were affected. Basic tools and the truck's electrical system were completely unharmed." No. The search team expanded their investigation to include the area around the tower. Using the coordinates that Sarah Harlan had provided, the numbers repeated in the mysterious broadcasts, they located a small clearing about half a mile northeast of the main site. The clearing appeared natural at first glance, roughly circular, about 30 feet in diameter. But closer examination revealed disturbing details. The grass and vegetation in the center of the clearing were brown and withered, despite the healthy growth around the perimeter. Soil samples collected from the affected area would later show unusual mineral concentrations that couldn't be explained by natural processes. More significantly, investigators found Marcus's missing radio at the edge of the clearing. The handheld unit was functional but contained something that would prove crucial to understanding what had happened to Marcus Webb. The radio's memory bank held his final transmission, recorded automatically by the device's emergency logging feature. When investigators played back the recording, they heard Marcus's voice, but it was strained, confused, unlike his usual professional demeanor. "Base, this is Tower 6. I'm at the coordinates from the broadcasts. Jesus, there's something here. The equipment readings are off the charts. I need to document this and get federal authorities involved. Someone's been using our tower for unauthorized transmissions, and it's connected to whatever's happening at these coordinates. I'm going..." The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by the same pulsing static pattern that had been reported during his final transmission 3 days earlier. Timestamp on the recording: 11:23 a.m., September 15th. Exactly when Marcus had gone silent on the main communication channel. Searching the clearing more thoroughly, investigators found footprints that matched Marcus's work boots leading into the affected area. The prints were clear and well-defined up to about 10 feet from the center of the clearing. Then they simply stopped. There were no prints leading back out, no signs of a struggle, no indication of where Marcus had gone from that point. Canine units were brought in Wednesday afternoon. 2 different tracking dogs followed Marcus's scent trail from his truck to the clearing, but both animals became agitated when they reached the area where the footprints ended. The dogs whined, backed away, and refused to continue searching despite their handler's encouragement. "I've worked with these dogs for 8 years, said handler Patricia Gomez. "They'll track through swamps, over rocks, through thick brush. I've never seen them react like this to a search area. It was like they sensed something that scared them." As the sun set on the 3rd day of searching, investigators had assembled a collection of physical evidence that raised far more questions than it answered. Marcus Webb had been working normally, had discovered something that prompted him to investigate coordinates from mysterious broadcasts, and had simply vanished from a small clearing where his footprints ended and his radio was found. But the most significant discovery was yet to come. On Thursday morning, September 19th, a black sedan with federal plates pulled into the Beacon Ridge site. The woman who emerged introduced herself to sheriff's deputies as Sarah Chen, an electromagnetic interference specialist with the Federal Communications Commission. Her arrival would reveal that Marcus Webb's disappearance had attracted attention at the highest levels of government. "I'm here to investigate reports of unauthorized transmissions from this facility," Chen told Sheriff Ray Holbrook. "The FCC has been monitoring unusual signal patterns originating from this location for approximately 6 weeks. Chen's credentials were impressive. A PhD in electrical engineering from MIT, 12 years with the FCC investigating illegal broadcasting and electromagnetic interference cases. But there was something about her arrival that felt too convenient, too well-timed, as if federal authorities had been waiting for an excuse to examine Beacon Ridge more closely. Using sophisticated detection equipment that she brought in a specialized van, Chen began analyzing the electromagnetic environment around the tower. Her findings were immediately troubling. The EM field readings at this site are unprecedented, she explained to local investigators. Normal background electromagnetic radiation measures about 0.1 to 1 milliwatt per square meter. At the base of this tower, I'm recording spikes of over 100 milliwatts, levels that should be impossible without massive transmission equipment operating at full power. Wow. But the tower's official transmission equipment was operating at normal levels. Whatever was generating the enormous electromagnetic fields was not part of the authorized communication systems. Chen's investigation led her to the tower's equipment building, a concrete structure that housed the main transmission gear and backup power systems. What she discovered there would change the entire nature of the investigation. Hidden behind a false panel in the building's basement was electronic equipment that didn't appear on any official inventory. The devices were sophisticated, military-grade, and according to Chen, designed for long-range signal amplification and encryption. This equipment shouldn't exist here, Chen told Sheriff Holbrook. It's not part of the tower's authorized configuration. It's not registered with the FCC, and it's certainly not standard commercial broadcasting gear. Serial numbers on the hidden equipment led Chen to classified military databases. What she found forced her to make a phone call that would bring even higher levels of federal involvement to Beacon Ridge. The equipment had been manufactured in 1947 for a classified project called Operation Deep Voice, a Cold War-era program designed to test long-range communication methods that could penetrate Soviet electronic countermeasures. According to declassified documents that Chen accessed, Beacon Ridge had been selected as one of 3 test sites for experimental signal amplification technology. The project was officially terminated in 1952, and all equipment was supposed to have been removed from the test sites. But clearly, someone had either forgotten about the Beacon Ridge installation or deliberately left it operational. More disturbing was Chen's discovery that the hidden equipment had been recently modified. New circuit boards, updated power supplies, and modern digital control systems had been integrated with the 1940s-era transmission gear. Someone with considerable technical expertise had been upgrading the system, turning it into a hybrid of vintage and contemporary technology. The modifications are sophisticated, Chen explained. Whoever did this work understood both the original 1947 design and current digital communication protocols. They've essentially created a transmission system that can operate on frequencies and at power levels that modern equipment isn't designed to detect. Analysis of the system's programming revealed that it had been transmitting automatically every night for the past 2 months, broadcasting the same numerical sequences and coordinates that local residents had been hearing on their radios. The transmissions were directed towards specific geographic locations across a 500-mile radius, including military installations, government facilities, and other radio towers. Chen's most significant discovery came when she traced the system's power source. The hidden equipment was drawing electricity from the tower's main power grid, but it was also connected to an underground cable that ran northeast from the building, toward the same clearing where Marcus Webb's footprints had ended. Following the cable required excavation equipment. On Friday afternoon, Chen and a team of federal technicians dug along the cable's path, revealing a sophisticated underground installation that extended far beyond what should have been possible at such a remote location. The cable led to what appeared to be a buried communications bunker, constructed of reinforced concrete and steel. The structure was much larger than anything that should exist in a national forest without extensive environmental permits and construction records. This installation predates modern construction regulations, Chen noted in her report. It was built during an era when federal agencies could undertake classified projects without local oversight or environmental review. But like the equipment in the tower building, the bunker showed signs of recent activity. Fresh air filtration systems had been installed. Modern computer equipment filled rooms that should have been abandoned for decades, and power systems hummed with current activity. Most significantly, Chen's electromagnetic field detectors showed that the strongest readings originated from deep within the underground facility. Whatever was generating the massive EM fields that had damaged Marcus's equipment was located in the depths of the bunker. Chen's investigation had revealed that Beacon Ridge was far more than a simple radio relay tower. It was part of a classified communications network that had been operating, in some form, for over 70 years. Someone had been secretly maintaining and upgrading the system, using it for purposes that remained unclear. But as Chen prepared to enter the underground facility, one question remained paramount. What had Marcus Webb discovered that made him disappear? And was the same fate waiting for anyone else who got too close to the truth? Analysis of Marcus Webb's final radio transmission would reveal the depth of his investigation into the Beacon Ridge mystery. Using enhanced audio processing equipment, FCC specialist Sarah Chen was able to recover portions of Marcus's recording that had been obscured by electromagnetic interference. The cleaned audio revealed that Marcus had been tracking the mysterious broadcasts for weeks before his disappearance. In his final transmission, partially recovered from the static, his voice showed a mixture of excitement and growing concern. "Base, the signal pattern matches what I've been documenting since early August. Someone's been using our equipment to send encrypted transmissions every night between 22:00 and 6:00 hours. The power levels are massive, far beyond our authorized output capacity." Now, Chen's technical analysis confirmed Marcus's observations. The hidden equipment in the tower's basement had been automatically activating each night, drawing power levels that should have triggered emergency shutdown procedures. Yet somehow, the system had been modified to bypass all safety protocols. Local ham radio operators, when finally contacted by investigators, provided crucial corroborating evidence. Harold Woody Woodson, a retired electronics teacher who operated an amateur radio station from his home 15 miles south of Beacon Ridge, had been monitoring the mysterious transmissions since they began in late July. "I've been a ham operator for 43 years, Woodson told investigators. "I know every legitimate signal in these mountains. These broadcasts were different from day one. Two powerful, wrong frequencies, and the content was unlike anything I'd ever heard. Not turned to a rate eye, Dundee." Woodson had made detailed recordings of the transmissions over several weeks. His logs showed that the broadcasts followed a precise pattern. They began each night at exactly 10:00 p.m. and continued until 6:00 a.m., transmitting sequences of numbers, coordinates, and what appeared to be technical instructions. Most intriguingly, the transmissions seemed to be part of a larger network. Woodson's directional antenna array had detected similar signals originating from locations across the Mid-Atlantic region, all using the same encryption patterns and transmission protocols. "It was like listening to a conversation," Woodson explained. "The Beacon Ridge transmissions would send a sequence, then pause, as if waiting for responses from other stations. Sometimes I could pick up faint replies on different frequencies, but they were too weak to record clearly." The content of the transmissions, when partially decoded by federal cryptographers, contained references to military installations, government facilities, and infrastructure targets across multiple states. The coordinates that had led Marcus to the clearing where he disappeared were just one set among hundreds that had been broadcast over the previous 2 months. Chen's investigation of Marcus's personal effects revealed the full scope of his amateur detective work. His trailer contained detailed maps of the region with dozens of locations marked in red ink, all corresponding to coordinates that had been broadcast from Beacon Ridge. Marcus had been methodically investigating each location, documenting what he found. His notes revealed a disturbing pattern. Many of the coordinates pointed to abandoned Cold War-era installations, decommissioned radar sites, defunct missile facilities, forgotten communication bunkers. At several locations, Marcus had found evidence of recent activity, fresh tire tracks, maintained access roads, and electronic equipment that should not have existed at supposedly abandoned sites. Marcus wasn't just investigating radio interference, Chen concluded in her preliminary report. He had uncovered what appears to be a network of hidden installations, all connected through the modified communication system at Beacon Ridge. The most chilling piece of evidence came from Marcus's personal shortwave radio, found in his trailer. The device contained recordings of transmissions that had never been reported to authorities, conversations between unknown operators discussing schedules, equipment status, and operational security. In one particularly disturbing recording, made 3 days before Marcus disappeared, two voices discussed the tower technician who was asking too many questions and documenting unauthorized activities. The conversation ended with instructions to implement containment protocols and ensure operational security is maintained. Chen's analysis of the audio suggested that Marcus had been under surveillance by whoever was operating the hidden communication network. His investigation into the mysterious broadcasts had not gone unnoticed, and someone had been monitoring his activities closely. The implications were staggering. For over 70 years, a classified communication network had been operating from sites like Beacon Ridge, hidden in plain sight among legitimate government facilities. The network had evolved from its Cold War origins into something else, a sophisticated system that could coordinate activities across vast geographic areas without detection by modern monitoring systems. Marcus Webb had stumbled onto this network through his routine maintenance work, and his technical expertise had allowed him to understand its significance. His detailed documentation of the system's capabilities and his discovery of the broader network had made him a threat to operational security. But critical questions remained. Who was operating the network in 2019? What was its current purpose? And most urgently, what had happened to Marcus when he followed the coordinates to that clearing in the forest? Chen's investigation had revealed the existence of a shadow communication system that had operated undetected for decades. But Marcus Webb's fate remained a mystery. The man who had tried to expose the truth had simply vanished, leaving behind only his meticulous records and a growing list of unanswered questions. As federal authorities prepared to expand their investigation into the hidden network, one thing became increasingly clear. Marcus Webb's disappearance was not a simple missing person case, but a glimpse into a world of classified operations that some people were apparently willing to kill to protect. On September 25, 2019, exactly 10 days after Marcus Webb's disappearance, the investigation at Beacon Ridge came to an abrupt halt. Federal authorities arrived at the site with classified orders that superseded local law enforcement jurisdiction, and within 48 hours, all evidence of the hidden communication network had been removed. Sheriff Ray Holbrook watched as unmarked trucks hauled away equipment from both the tower building and the underground bunker. They cleaned everything out, he later told reporters. Sophisticated gear, computer systems, cables, even the concrete bunker itself was sealed with steel plates. By the time they finished, you'd never know there had been anything unusual at that site. No. FCC investigator Sarah Chen found herself reassigned to a different case without explanation. Her detailed reports on the Beacon Ridge investigation were classified at a security level that placed them beyond the reach of local authorities, and her requests for continued access to the site were denied. I was told that the matter involved national security issues that were outside my clearance level, Chen would later state in a brief interview. All I can say is that the technical anomalies we documented were unprecedented, and the investigation raised questions that apparently weren't meant to be answered publicly. The official federal report on Marcus Webb's disappearance, heavily redacted when released 6 months later, concluded that he had encountered an industrial accident while investigating unauthorized equipment at a communications facility. The report made no mention of the hidden network, the mysterious broadcasts, or the sophisticated underground installation. Local residents noticed immediate changes after the federal intervention. The nighttime radio interference that had plagued the area for months stopped completely. Television reception improved, electronic equipment began functioning normally, and the strange electromagnetic readings that had damaged Marcus's instruments disappeared entirely. But rather than providing answers, these changes only multiplied the community's questions. The Harlan family, who had lived near the tower for 3 generations, reported that government agents interviewed them extensively about what they had observed over the decades. They wanted to know everything, Sarah Harlan explained. Going back to when my father-in-law was a boy, what his parents had seen, what stories had been passed down in the family. They were particularly interested in the 1940s and 1950s, when the tower was first built. Other families received similar visits. Federal agents collected decades of amateur radio logs, confiscated recording equipment that might have captured the mysterious broadcasts, and required residents to sign documents that severely limited what they could discuss publicly about their experiences. The broader investigation into the network that Marcus had discovered simply vanished. Coordinates that he had identified as suspicious locations were either declared off-limits to civilian access or showed no evidence of recent activity when independently investigated by journalists and researchers. Marcus Webb's personal effects were returned to his supervisor, Dale Morton, with significant items missing. His detailed maps, his recording equipment, and his extensive notes about the Beacon Ridge anomalies were not among the returned materials. Officials stated that these items were retained as evidence in an ongoing federal investigation, but provided no timeline for their eventual return. The search for Marcus himself continued for several more weeks, but without access to the most promising leads that his own investigation had uncovered. Search teams were restricted to areas that federal authorities deemed safe for civilian access, effectively limiting them to well-mapped terrain that had already been thoroughly investigated. By November 2019, the official search was suspended. Marcus Webb was declared missing under circumstances that remained undetermined, and the case was transferred to federal jurisdiction with minimal local oversight. Ham radio operator Harold Woodson continued monitoring frequencies where the mysterious transmissions had originated, but found only silence. Whatever was broadcasting from Beacon Ridge is gone, he told investigators. The airwaves are clean now, but that doesn't mean the network was destroyed. It might just have moved to different locations, different frequencies. Indeed, reports began surfacing from other parts of the country, similar patterns of electromagnetic interference, unexplained equipment failures at remote communication sites, and maintenance technicians who reported unusual findings that were quickly investigated by federal authorities. Today, more than 4 years after Marcus Webb's disappearance, Beacon Ridge operates as a routine communication relay tower. Maintenance is now performed by federal contractors who work in teams and are accompanied by security personnel. Local residents note that the technicians never work alone, never stay overnight, and never discuss their activities with the community. The clearing where Marcus's footprints ended and his radio was found has been declared an environmental protection area, closed to public access. The vegetation has returned to normal, but federal soil monitoring continues on a monthly basis. Marcus Webb's trailer outside Hillsborough sits empty, maintained by his former employer pending resolution of his case. Neighbors sometimes report seeing lights in the windows late at night, but investigations have found no evidence of occupancy. The questions that Marcus tried to answer remain unanswered. What was the true purpose of the hidden communication network? Who was operating it in 2019? How many other sites like Beacon Ridge exist across the country? And most fundamentally, what happened to a dedicated technician who asked too many questions about equipment that wasn't supposed to exist? In the mountains of West Virginia, where families have learned to keep their own counsel and federal authority has always been viewed with suspicion, people still talk quietly about the strange broadcasts, the technician who disappeared, and the questions that were never meant to be asked. Marcus Webb discovered something at Beacon Ridge that powerful forces wanted to keep hidden. Whether he's still alive, and what became of the network he uncovered, remains lost in the static between what the government wants us to know and what it's determined to keep secret.